In the early medieval period, northern India was divided into a number of small principalities. In this chapter, we will study the following concepts: emergence of new dynasties, Rajput warfare for wealth, administration, the Cholas. Samantas. In the early medieval period, northern India was divided into a number of small principalities. After the death of Harsha, many small kingdoms sprang up. Harsha, like many rulers of the time, had granted large estates to his senior officers in lieu of salary. After the death of their overlord, these feudal nobles set themselves up as independent warlords. This decentralized system had begun during the later Gupta period. Samantas or petty chieftains were given land grants, in return for which they had to pay taxes to the king or even maintain a small army which the king could call upon during an emergency. On the face of it, this arrangement made a lot of sense. A king could maintain the core of the royal army and spread the burden of maintaining the rest of the huge, costly army across several nobles. This system also suited the nobles because it gave them local autonomy, wealth, influence, and actual military power. The undesirable results of this feudal pact was that if a king's power declined, the nobles usually revolted, since their lands and army had already made them quite powerful. So, after Harsha's death and due to the subsequent confusion, these Samantas soon became quite powerful and adopted pompous titles such as Mahasamanta or Mahamandaleshwara, meaning the great lord of a circle or region. Rashtrakuta. Rashtrakutas were earlier subordinates of the Chalukya rulers. One of the Samantas who made the transition from a subordinate to sovereign was Rashtrakuta. An instance was Danti Durga, Rashtrakuta chief who, in the mid-8th century, declared himself independent of Chalukya rule. Hiranyagarbha. Danti Durga performed the Hiranyagarbha Yajna to proclaim his dynasty as being born from the golden womb as Kshatriyas or rulers. Though he was not a Kshatriya by birth, this ritual made him one. Independent kingdom. On the other hand, some enterprising persons also set up independent kingdoms. Mayura Sharman, the founder of the Kadamba dynasty, and Harichandra, said to be the founder of Gurjara Pratihara dynasty, left their traditional vocations and established kingdoms. They were by profession Brahmins, but took to arms, a Kshatriya domain typically occupied by the Rajputs. Spread of the kingdom. Repeated Arab invasions split India into a number of small kingdoms. The stage was set for a major change in the political map of India. This is why, from a historical point of view, the period from 800 to 1200 CE is so important. This period can be examined under two heads. Firstly, the geographical spread of the kingdoms, and secondly, their political and administrative structures. During the medieval period, there were close contacts between the northern and southern parts of the subcontinent. They gradually increased contacts with each other. The northern Deccan kingdoms participated in the struggle to extend their control over northern India. Later, the southern Deccan kingdoms also tried to conquer the Gangetic plains through the sea routes. Tripartite struggle. Between 750 CE and 1200 CE, many powerful empires arose in northern India and the Deccan. The Pala kings ruled the eastern and northern regions of India till the middle of the 9th century. The Pratihara Empire dominated western and northern parts of India till the middle of the 10th century, while the Rashtrakuta Empire dominated the Deccan. All of these rulers struggled for mastery over Kannauj, possession of which was symbolic of sovereignty over northern India. It was started by a clash between the Pratihara ruler Vatsaraj and the Pala ruler Dharmapala. The Pala ruler was defeated and Kannauj fell into the hands of Vatsaraj. But at this crucial stage, the Rashtrakuta ruler Dhruva attacked the Pratihara territory. The Pratihara ruler had to rush to Rajputana. Dhruva returned to the Deccan, and Dharmapala seized the chance to recover his territories, recapture Kannauj, and become the lord of North India. Tripartite struggle. The next Pratihara ruler, Nagabhatta, also tried to capture Kannauj, but the Pratihara attempt was again foiled by the intervention of Rashtrakuta ruler Govind III. Thus, Dharmapala and his son Devapala continued to rule over Kannauj. When Devapala's successors proved weak and incompetent, the Pratihara ruler Nagabhatta II, 805 to 833 AD, defeated Chakrayudh of Kannauj and transferred his capital to the city. He founded the Gurjara Pratihara kingdom at Kannauj. This put an end to the 100-year struggle among the three powers for the control of Kannauj. But their mutual conflicts and the prolonged struggle for power had exhausted the stamina and resources of the three contenders. They went into decline, and within 300 years, all three kingdoms collapsed and gave way to new powers. The Rashtrakuta Empire was overthrown by the later Chalukyas. The Palas of Bengal were replaced by the Senas, and the Pratihara Empire broke up into small, unimportant states. Gurjara Pratiharas. The Gurjara Pratiharas were the early Rajputs who began their rule from Gujarat and southwestern Rajasthan. The Pratiharas ruled over Avanti and parts of southern Rajasthan in the beginning of the 8th century. They rose to power under King Nagabhatta I. In 738 CE, they defeated the Arabs of Sindh and pushed them back. King Bhoja was the most powerful Pratihara ruler. He ruled from 836 CE to 885 CE. Arab traveler Suleiman, who visited India around 851 CE, has praised King Bhoja's reign. The last Pratihara ruler, Rajapala, was attacked by Mahmud of Ghazni in 1018 CE. Palas Gopala was the founder of this dynasty. He was elected to the throne by the nobles because the previous ruler had died issueless. He established a monastery at Udantpuri, modern Bihar Sharif. It was Gopala's son, Dharmapala, whom we have referred to in the tripartite struggle. This dynasty ruled over parts of modern-day Bengal and Bihar. Nalanda University was patronized by them. Rashtrakutas. The Rashtrakuta kingdom was founded by Dantidurga, who overthrew the Chalukyas in 715 CE and established his capital at Manyakhet. The Rashtrakutas soon dominated the entire northern Maharashtra. They patronized Shivism, Jainism, Vaishnavism, Buddhism, and Islam. The magnificent Kailash temple at Ellora was built by Krishna III in the 9th century. In the early medieval period, northern India was divided into a number of small principalities. In this chapter, we will study the following concepts: emergence of new dynasties, Rajput warfare for wealth, administration, the Cholas. The Rajputs. The Rajputs have a long history. A number of Rajput principalities sprung up across northern and central India after the death of Harsha. Each principality jealously guarded its own powers and refused to submit to another. They controlled vast areas of the country for 4 long centuries, between 800 CE and 1200 CE. This period is therefore called the Rajput period, but intensive wars and constant rivalry weakened them. So, when invaders from the northwest appeared on the country's frontiers in the 11th and 12th centuries, they generally failed to present a united front and lost their independence one by one. Due to their stubborn independence and rivalry, a foreign race established its sway over the whole country. The first among the new invaders was Mahmud of Ghazni in 1000 CE. He had to face a loose Rajput confederacy but overcame it. The Chauhans. The Chauhan dynasty was founded by Guptuk in the 11th century CE. Ajay Deva, a Chauhan ruler, conquered Ajmer and Vishala Deva conquered Delhi in the 12th century CE. In this way, the Chauhans became the lords of Delhi and Ajmer. Vishala Deva Chauhan was a great lover of literature, and Prithvi Raj Chauhan 1168 to 1192 was the greatest ruler of this dynasty. Prithvi Raj Chauhan was a courageous warrior. His achievements and exploits have been described by his court poet Chand Bardai in his famous book Prithvi Raj Raso. Turkish invasions. The first of these invaders was Mahmud of Ghazni. Ghazni was a small kingdom in Afghanistan. It was founded by Turkish slave Alaptigin in the 10th century CE. He was succeeded by Saptagin. Jaipal, a ruler of the Hindu Shahi dynasty in Afghanistan and Punjab, fought several battles against the invasions of Saptagin. After Saptagin died in 997 CE, his elder son, Mahmud of Ghazni, ascended the throne. After his accession, he led as many as 17 expeditions against India during 1000 CE and 1027 CE. He learnt that the temples of India had immense amounts of gold, jewelry, and precious stones. In his quest to annex this wealth, he destroyed many temples of northern India. Some of his famous campaigns were against Nagarkot, Thaneshwar, Kannauj, and Mathura. Of all his expeditions, his plunder and destruction of the famous Somnath temple of Saurashtra in the course of his 16th invasion in 1025-1026 CE brought him by far the most loot, estimated to be worth 20 million dirhams during that period. Al-Biruni. In one of his campaigns, Mahmud was accompanied by Al-Biruni, a great Persian scholar. Al-Biruni lived for many years in India and even learnt the Sanskrit language. He also wrote a book on India known as the Kitab al-Hind or Tahqiq-e-Hind. Muhammad Ghori. After Mahmud died in 1030 CE, India enjoyed a respite of about a century and a half from foreign invasions. Turkish rulers remained confined to Punjab. Then, a Seljuk Turk leader, Shahibuddin Muhammad Ghori, 1173 to 1206 CE, drove out the Ghaznavi ruler and founded the kingdom of Gauri on its ruins. Within 5 years of his succession to throne, he raided the dominion of Anhilwara via Multan, but its ruler drove him back with severe losses. By 1191 CE, he succeeded in annexing Punjab and encamped near Sirhind, a border town of the Chauhan dominion. As a result, Prithviraj Chauhan attacked Muhammad Gauri. The first battle of Tarain was fought in 1191 CE between Prithviraj Chauhan and Muhammad Gauri. In this battle, Gauri had to flee from the battlefield with bleeding wounds. Next year, he returned better prepared to fight Prithviraj. The second battle of Tarain, fought in 1192 CE, is regarded as the turning point in Indian history because Prithviraj was defeated, taken captive, and ultimately executed. Thus, just a few battles in the plains of northwestern India during a short period of 14 years changed the fate of India. Administration. The new kings adopted many high-sounding titles like Maharaja Dhiraj and Tribhuvana Chakravarti. The officers were mainly recruited from influential families and their positions were hereditary. This was true for both the army as well as the revenue collection machinery. One of the biggest changes which took place during the medieval period was in the system of land revenue collection. The king did not have direct control over revenue collection in the medieval period due to the feudal setup. This change in the revenue system had downstream effects on other aspects of life as well. Under this decentralized system, officers were not paid their salaries in cash. Rather, they were paid with land grants. At first, the officers did not have any rights of ownership over the land. They could only claim the revenue from the land. The system of paying salaries by land grants for revenue collection increased as the medieval period progressed. As the number of grantees increased, more and more land went into the hands of the grantees. This system made officers less dependent on the king. As a result, king became too weak to maintain a standing army. This explains why the kingdoms of the north could not defend themselves properly against the foreign invasions. Prashastis and land grants. A prashasti gives us information about the various activities of the king, such as land grants, administration, wars, victories, titles, etc. Written on behalf of a king by a learned man, these prashastis were recorded on stone slabs, copper plates, on the walls of temples, etc. One prashasti written in Sanskrit and found in Gwalior, MP, describes the exploits of Nagabhatta king as follows. The kings of Andhra, Saindhava, Sindh, Vidarbha, part of Maharashtra, and Kalinga, Orissa, fell before him even as he was a prince. He won a victory over Chakrayuddha, the ruler of Kannauj. He defeated the king of Vanga, Bengal, Anartha, part of Gujarat, Malwa, part of MP, Kirata, forest people, Turushka, Turks, Vatsa, Matsya, both kingdoms in northern India. In the early medieval period, northern India was divided into a number of small principalities. In this chapter, we will study the following concepts: emergence of new dynasties, Rajput warfare for wealth, administration, the Cholas. The Cholas. At the beginning, there were only three kingdoms, Chera, Chola, and Pandya in South India. These kingdoms have also been mentioned in Ashoka's edicts. The Pallavas and Chalukyas emerged in the 4th century CE. Both these empires ruled over the region for 400 years. But in the 9th century CE, the Cholas started emerging as a great power in South India. They were initially a minor feudal clan known as the Muttariyar and were subordinate to the Pallava king of Kanchipuram. Vijayalaya, 846 to 871 CE, founded Chola dynasty by conquering Tanjore. Rajaraja I. He was a brilliant general and led several campaigns in many directions. His achievements were remarkable. He extended his rule to the north as far as Kalinga. His capital was Tanjore. He also conquered the island of Sri Lanka. Rajaraja was not only a great conqueror, but also a capable administrator. He instituted many reforms in the revenue administration and took measures for the welfare of the peasants. Rajaraja was also a great builder. His most famous monument is the Raja Rajeshwara Temple of Shiva at Tanjore. It is the finest specimen of Dravidian architecture. Rajendra Chola. Rajaraja I was succeeded by his son Rajendra Chola. The worthy son of a worthy father, he raised the Chola power to its high water mark. He occupied the whole of Sri Lanka. The conquest of Bengal was the most important achievement of Rajendra, whereafter he assumed the title of Gangikonda Chola. Rajendra's most impressive achievement was the conquest of Java, Sumatra, Malaya, and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. This shows his prowess as a naval commander and the sheer magnitude of naval operations during his reign. Chola administration. The Chola administration was highly systematized and well organized. The vast empire was divided into 6 provinces or mandalas, each governed by a governor. The provinces were further divided into districts or nadus. Each nadu was subdivided into kotamas or kuramas, consisting of a number of villages. The king was the head of the whole administration. The king had a number of high officials in charge of various departments. Provincial administration. Generally, the king appointed persons belonging to the royal family as governors. They carried out the orders of the king in the provinces. They were also responsible for maintaining law and order in their territories. They had high officials to assist them in carrying out their tasks. Village administration. The villages enjoyed self-government under the Chola kings. All the powers of administration in the village were given to village assembly, Ur or Sabha. It carried on its work through various committees. It had the power to collect and spend the revenue of the village. It undertook works of public utility and maintained charitable institutions. Rich peasants of Vilala caste exercised great control over village administration. The landlords were bestowed with many titles such as Muvende Velan, a Velan or peasant serving 3 kings, Ariyar, chief, etc., by Chola kings, and entrusted them with important offices of the state at center. Financial administration. The main source of income of the state was land revenue. It was probably 1/6 of the total produce. The other sources of revenue were the salt tax, custom duties, professional tax, water cess, fines, etc. The income of the state was spent on the king and his court, salaries of officials, army, religious institutions, and construction works of public utility. The Chola inscriptions used more than 400 terms of describing different kinds of taxes. The most frequently mentioned tax is Veti, or forced labor, and Kadamai, or land revenue. Art and architecture. The Chola kings were great patrons of art. They developed and perfected the Dravidian style of art and architecture. Amongst the crafts, the making of bronze images was most distinct in its style, especially a bronze image of dancing Shiva or Nataraj. The Chola temples. The greatest Chola monument is the Raja Rajeshwara temple at Tanjore, built by Raja Raja the Great. Its main structure is 180 feet long and its great Shikhara tower is 190 feet high. The temple is crowned by a huge dome. It is covered from top to bottom with beautiful carvings. Its construction was started in 1000 CE and was completed in 1010 CE. This temple is a landmark in the evolution of architecture in South India. Another great monument of the Chola period is the temple of Gangaikonda Cholapuram, which was built during the reign of Rajendra I. Its design and style is similar to that of the other famous temple at Tanjore, the Rajeshwara temple. The main temple is built on a rectangle which is 240 feet broad. The mandapa of the temple is supported by 150 pillars.